Wait till you hear what your friends have planned. By order of Her Majesty Queen Victoria, the Bechuanaland Protectorate is to become a crown colony under the direct authority of Cecil Rhodes. A colony! What do you think of your allies now, huh?
Segoma, when you were a boy, some foolish people tried to poison you against the British. You fell easy victim.
But they're stealing your country!
Segoma, British soldiers coming just now.
Now do you believe me?
Remember my law. Never attack. Just defend.
What are you saying?
What are you waiting for? Rally my cavalry! Hurry!
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa, asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early were the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, whose spirit and sacrifice. We asked these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman, Dessalines, to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We asked these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
To the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
Before Amon, the greatest one, who though hidden from us is the source of all life, prosperity, and health. Let us unite in peace. Let us heed the call of our ancestors and let the African spirit unite us as we attempt to continue the struggle, confident that we will conquer. Anko Jasanem. Anko Jasanem. Life, prosperity, health. Indominataru, good morning. Tanastilin, greetings. Jambawote, how you doing? We are Africans, not because we were born in Africa. We're Africans because Africa was born in us. Very pleasant and special morning to you. Welcome to the Pan-African space. Welcome to the African-centered space, breaking the cycle of mental control, understanding that he who holds the land holds economic power. What do we want? We've got a chant where we ask, what do we want? And the call and response chant is justice. And as African-centered, Pan-African, African, black people, maybe we really do need to replace that word justice with power. What do we want? Power. How do we get it? We take it. When your house is burning down, it's no use beating the tom-toms. We're not going to eliminate imperialism, white privilege and white supremacy by shouting insults against it. Amilcar Cabral tells us, we're not going to eliminate imperialism by shouting insults against it. For us, the best or worst shout against imperialism, whatever its form, is to take up arms and fight. What do we want? We're not Africans because we were born in Africa. We're Africans because Africa was born in us. What does that mean? Welcome to the space. This is a space in which we deal with black people's issues, black people's concerns, reuniting the African family for development. That's a vision of this space, or in this space, of this program. As a matter of fact, this reunification that we talk about, this reuniting of the African family for development, I think is one of the most important issues to be dealt with in the unfinished revolution. An ongoing revolution that our ancestors carried valiantly. And because of the interruption in this great history, in this great race, talking about the African race, the interruption of slavery, we find ourselves with an unfinished revolution. The business of reuniting the African family for development. How do we do that? What do we want? Seems to me that we have to rethink that the revolutionary cry of the 60s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even before, the answer is, I think, rightly so, and was rightly so, justice. But it seems to me in redefining the strategies for the unfinished revolution that the answer must be power. Our powerlessness, the powerlessness of an entire race of people, is responsible for the injustice, for the unjust justice system, and so much more that we find ourselves facing, dealing with, kicking against. And so that each instance of injustice results in our response, whether it is through marches or outcry or the burning down of capitalist structures, usually shops and business places in our communities, as we see in the U.S. But how do we reunite the African family for development? Is it through that process of responding to particular flashpoints in an unjust justice system? Or is it by ensuring that there is sustained power? And what does that mean, power? Or black power, for that matter. So, of course, the call and the rallying call in terms of reuniting the African family for development, which is a vision of a space, it seems to me that power is the issue, even as we remember and rememory our brother, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, born June 29, 1941. Tomorrow, June 29, being the 74th anniversary of his birth. He embodied and symbolized the black struggle, black power, and was always ready for the revolution. So as we seek truth and learn from the past, absorbing the spirit of the African possibility, honoring our moral obligation to remember. We remember our brother, Elder Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. We've got a lot coming up in the program this morning. Part of our mission includes blazing new paths towards Africa's rendezvous with destiny, bearing witness, demanding change, crafting an African-centered agenda for change and development, honoring, of course, our moral obligation to remember. My name is Kabo Ma'at Kheru. We've got an interesting program lined up for you this morning. As we said, it's June 28 today, and tomorrow, June 29, marks the 74th anniversary of the birth of our brother Elder, now ancestor, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. And in the program this morning, we're going to be talking to our brother Elder Mukasa Dada, Some persons know him as Willie Ricks, civil rights leader, field secretary of a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, of which Kwame Ture was chairman. Kwame Ture, of course, legendary civil rights leader, chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the United States, patriarch of Black Power, Pan-African activist and social revolutionary, authoring Black Power, The Politics of Revolution, Black Power, Back to Pan-Africanism. And so Mukasa Dada joins us on the phone lines this morning to remember Kwame Ture. Also in the program this morning, we have been talking about it now. We have joining us in studio this morning the Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis to talk about liberation theology, or more specifically theologies of liberation. The Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis is the president of the United Theological College of the West Indies at the University of the West Indies, pastor, teacher, missionary, and she'll be joining us this morning live in studio. Going to be looking at theologies of liberation. Dr. Arthur Green, Rahu Imata Kimet Ba, has published his second book, An Essay on Crime in Jamaica. Medical doctor, Pan-African, convener of the St. Anne Botanical Growers Association. He joins me on the phone lines this morning as we look at an essay on crime in Jamaica. Also this morning, last week, we started a conversation, an investigative look at what's happening in Montego Bay at the Cornwall Beach and access, the extent to which the people of Jamaica, the people of Montego Bay, the people of St. James, but generally the people of Jamaica might be denied access to the Cornwall Beach if we don't see some changes in how the development process is taking place right now. We spoke with the mayor, Glendon Harris, and he assured us that there will be changes and that those changes were already in motion. This morning, Councillor Charles Sinclair, Councillor for the Montego Bay North East Division and minority leader in the Montego Bay Parish Council, joins me on the phone lines to talk about that. So we're looking this morning at Kwame Ture, Ready for the Revolution, Theologies of Liberation, Crime in Jamaica, through the eyes of the author of the book, An Essay on Crime in Jamaica, Dr. Arthur Green. Also an update on access to the Cornwall Beach in Montego Bay. Let me welcome you to the space once more. The bottom line this morning is a rebroadcast of a bottom line we did in 2013. The reason why we're taking this bottom line that we carried 2 years ago, it was when we learned of PRISM and the extent to which the United States government had trampled on the rights to privacy of its citizens. Many questions were asked then by me in that commentary about our own particular situation, because it seemed to me then that if we were getting this information about the United States, then we should be asking questions about Jamaica. Now we're hearing 2 years after, 2 years back, when we spoke of the likelihood of Jamaica being in a pretty similar situation, if not worse, or Jamaicans, my own colleagues in the media, and this is not a lie, accused me, jokingly and seriously, of once again being a conspiracy theorist. Now, some of those very same colleagues are reporting on the breach of privacy, are now telling us that the Jamaican government has been listening to our conversations according to human rights groups and so on. We must be on the right side of history. And critical thinking is important for journalism. The role of a journalist is not simply to report on what we have been told. What we have been told, and this is what I was taught, even as a young, fresh journalist who had not yet gone to journalism school, I was taught this at a very, very early stage by Connie Witt and others at JBC, that the role of a journalist was not merely to report, but that the report, especially from the government, especially from the state, especially from the politicians, that the press release and the information we got should be treated as research material, and that the real truth lies in what we unearth using that bit of information as research material. What we find in journalism today is a regurgitation of what politicians tell us, a regurgitation of what we get from the private sector. And a part of the problem is laziness on the part of journalists, and a bigger part of the problem is the extent to which journalism has been co-opted by the licky-licky mentality, by social climbers, and by those who want to be seen in and be part of. The journalist, I fear, and I really don't fear, but the journalist cannot be so cozy with politicians so as not to be able to speak truth to power. Appearances to the mind are of four kinds. Appearances to the mind are of four kinds. Things either are what they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they're not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these cases is a journalist's task. Epictetus, not just the wise man's task, but the journalist's task. All right, once again, let me welcome you to the space. We're on the social media. We're on the 107s, 107.1 all the way to 107.9. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the 107s. Thank you for joining from all across Jamaica. Thank you so much for being part of the African family. We're also on the internet at IRIFM.net. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on the internet. We're all over the Android mobile phone apps. And if that's where you are, welcome to the space. Welcome to the Pan-African space. We're on the social media, Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Kheru, at Kheru. That's KABUMAATKHERU. Or you can find me on Twitter at ChinaInJA, at ChinaInJA. That's me. We're also on the Facebook, Kabuma at Kheru. Or you can find me on Facebook at the Running African. You can also find me on Facebook, China in Jamaica. That's me. We know they're listening to our conversations. We know they monitor us closely. We have nothing to hide. We're just seeking truth, learning from the past, and honoring our moral obligation to remember. So go right ahead. Do your best. All right, and we are on, of course, we're everywhere else. Foursquare, LinkedIn, Pinterest, you name it. But I think once you find us, also read my blog. We haven't posted anything in a little while, but we're also on Tumblr. The Bottom Line. If you go to Tumblr, The Bottom Line, that's where you'll find copies of The Bottom Line as presented here in this space. We're Africans not because we were born in Africa. We're Africans because Africa was born in us. Welcome once again to the Pan-African space. Lots to talk about this morning. Theologies of liberation. Kwame Ture, we're ready for the revolution. Crime in Jamaica. An essay on crime in Jamaica. An update on access to the Cornwall Beach in Montego Bay. Thanks for being a part of the African family.
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory. When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. Without the African connection, we are a disjointed people, begging for the entry into somebody else's house.
Free Africa. Running Africa ni. Ahaye Jamaica. Sa wote kaka se boso kadia.
And happening now, mass deportation is still underway in the Dominican Republic. More than 17,000 so-called undocumented Haitians have reportedly voluntarily left the Dominican Republic since the end of a controversial registration process that left thousands of people facing deportation. This, of course, is according to officials in the DomRep. The Dominican Republic, if you recall, gave undocumented immigrants, a vast majority of whom are from Haiti, until June 17 to register with the authorities or face deportation. But with the documents slow to arrive from Haiti and registration offices engage in all kinds of delaying tactics, more than 180,000 people were still unregistered by the deadline. According to the Director General of the Dominican Immigration Authority, Ruben Paulino, of those 17,456 have so far left for Haiti, and they have done so voluntarily. Paulino alleges that more than 800 of them left on buses provided by the Dominican government. Whether this is so or not is still to be ascertained. Meanwhile, we understand that the presidential aide, Jose Ramon Peralta, says the government of the Dominican Republic will be incentivizing the voluntary exit and return of all right up to the last minute. He says that when that phase is finished, they will begin non-voluntary returns. Another word, of course, for non-voluntary would be forced. So the euphemisms that are being used in the international media and in Dominican Republic are interesting. Immigration officials in the Dominican Republic have promised not to carry out mass deportations and say each case will be considered individually, but there are concerns that these deportations are now being called voluntary return. The process, of course, has drawn international warnings that it could provoke a new humanitarian disaster in Haiti. Haiti is still struggling to recover from its 2010 earthquake, subsequent cholera outbreak, cholera given to Haitians by United Nations workers, and of course no compensation. And Haiti is still struggling to come to terms with or to recover from being defrauded of millions of dollars by the American Red Cross and other aid agencies. The Dominican Republic is also being criticized for leaving the Dominicans that is of Haitian descent effectively stateless and facing deportation to a country that many of them have never been to or even speak the language. Haiti's Prime Minister Evans Paul on Thursday slammed the deportation policy as discriminatory. Paul said the problem is that the Dominicans are using subterfuge to mix nationality and race. He notes that this is all to say anyone who is black is assumed to be Haitian, even if they were born in the Dominican Republic. Dominican President Danilo Medina rejected criticism of the program as discriminatory, saying it was in fact designed to benefit thousands of Haitians. A defiant Medina says Dominican Republic will not accept false accusations of racism or xenophobia. Haitian immigrants have long been targets of resentment and racism in the Dominican Republic, which boiled over into the massacre of thousands of them in 1937 under the orders of Dominican dictator Rafael Trujillo. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the second batch of 800 Zimbabweans have been deported from South Africa, were expected to arrive in the country by train earlier this morning. It is now this evening in Zimbabwe. The deportees were rounded up for, according to South African authorities, violating South Africa's immigration laws. The first group of 796 all-male arrived in the country by way of Beitbridge border post on June 3. This brings to 8,750 the total number of people who have been deported from South Africa since the beginning of the year. The total number of Africans. South Africa is not deporting any Chinese, regardless of whether they're there legally or illegally. Zimbabwe's Consul General to South Africa said the documentation of those due for deportation has been completed. And in Tunisia, Tunisia's Prime Minister Habib Essid has announced a clampdown on security after an attack on a holiday resort in which 38 people were killed. He said army reservists would be deployed to archaeological sites and resorts. About 80 mosques accused of spreading venom will close within a week, he said. 15 of the victims in Friday's attack near Sousse were Britons. The gunman was shot dead. He was identified as Saifuddin Rezgui, a student not previously known to authorities, according to officials. One Belgian and one German have so far been identified among the dead. One citizen of the Irish Republic is also confirmed dead. There were also thought to be Tunisians and French killed in the attack, which was claimed by IS, the Islamic State. At least 36 people were injured, some seriously. It was the second major attack on tourists in Tunisia since March, when militants killed 22 people, mainly foreigners, at Bardo Museum in Tunis. You recall, of course, that the so-called Arab Spring had its genesis in Tunisia and was hijacked by Western imperialism. Now in South Africa, remember that massacre at the mines? The commission which investigated the events culminating in the police killings of 34 striking platinum miners in August 2012 has called for criminal investigations into the role of the police. The commission said the police concealed evidence from the commission and wants a formal inquiry into the fitness to hold office of the National Police Chief. In a report which reads in parts like those of judicial inquiries into police massacres in the apartheid era, the commission criticized the return of the military-style policing which was abolished in the early years of South African democracy. After the ANC, the African National Congress, came to power in 1994, the name of the police force was changed to the South African Police Service, SAPS, and military ranks for its officers were abolished. However, ranks were reintroduced during President Jacob Zuma's first term in office. As is to be expected from a commission presided over by a long-time appellate judge, Justice Ian Farlam, who during the apartheid era acted for the defense in a number of political trials. The report is cautiously worded, but underlying its recommendations that prosecutors should investigate charges against police for the killings of 34 miners, and that the National Commissioner of Police should face a formal hearing on her fitness for office. Findings which are devastating to a police force which since 1994 has been trying to build a reputation as a non-partisan service working in the broader public interest. And happening now, disturbing news coming out of Israel, as the Israeli police arrested at least 17 people 1 week after it had agreed with the Ethiopian leaders to improve their relations. About 500 Ethiopian Jews protested in the streets of Tel Aviv against racism their community faces after the judicial probe of a policeman who beat an Ethiopian Israeli soldier was closed without prosecution. Some of the banners held up by the Ethiopians in Israel reads, "We are the house of Israel. No one can take away this identity." Others, "And I have no other country, even if racism burns through it. We as citizens of a state of Israel protest this decision and feel abandoned in the face of violence and racism against us by the law." The organizers of the protest said the decision of the attorney is only one decision of many of the agencies of law and justice against civilians from Ethiopia in the last decade. Discriminatory rulings are made against the background of the victim's skin color. "We're going to protest against the judiciary," they said, "which is tainted by prejudice and racism against Israelis of Ethiopian descent, against Israelis of Ethiopian descent whose skin color is black. We appeal to all citizens of the state of Israel," they say, "to protest with us for the sake of change." According to local reports, at least 17 people have been arrested after they allegedly tried to block the intersection of Ammunition Hill and Menachem Begin. You might recall that earlier in May, Israeli President Rivlin acknowledged that the Ethiopian protesters were suffering from discrimination and racism in the country, in Israel, and that their pain had to be taken into account. According to the protesters, however, racism is not only social but also institutionalized in Israel against black people. Police brutality against their members, they say, could be related to the similar racism denounced in the United States. Last year, a 22-year-old Ethiopian Israeli died during protests after receiving a serious injury when the police used tear gas against him. His family found him handcuffed and unconscious in police custody. He died shortly after in hospital. Last Sunday, the wife of a senior Israeli minister tweeted. She issued a tweet about the U.S. President Barack Obama. I don't know if you saw that tweet. Some people say it's racist. It's not been reported in the mainstream Israeli-controlled media. But the wife of a senior Israeli minister tweeted about Barack Obama, and this is a tweet, I quote, "Do you know what Obama coffee is?" That's a question she asked. Do you know what Obama coffee is? And she answered by saying black and weak. The wife of a senior Israeli minister tweeted that. More than 135,000 Ethiopian Jews live in Israel, having immigrated to the Jewish state in two waves, one in 1984 and the other in 1991. And if you remember, in 1991, the Falashas, and we must really stop saying Falashas, but I know it's a name that is well known, they consider it derogatory. But the Ethiopian Jews were taken from Ethiopia. We covered that here at IRFM, and taken back to Israel, recognized as original Jews. We've been looking at racism against black people and Ethiopians in Israel for some time now. Well, the information coming to us from the continent of Africa, from the United States, from the African diaspora, wherever black people are, reads the same. That is why we must change the conversation. Justice is not what we need or want. Power is what we must claim. And we can only do that through organization, through coming together wherever we are. We must organize. You're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African.
America in 1966 when he hollered, "Black power! Black 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 power! What time is it?
Here inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa. And in the next segment of the program, going to be remembering our brother, elder, ancestor, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, the honorary Prime Minister of the Black Panther Party. He was born on the 29th of June, 1941, and so tomorrow, being the 74th anniversary of his birth, Kwame Ture embodied and symbolized the black struggle, black power, and and as always, and is always ready for the revolution. One of the things that Kwame Ture stresses, of course, is African unity. Going to be talking to Mukasa Dada Willyrix about this brother. All right, here we are. Africa Unite, we're back with you and going to the phone lines now where we'll be speaking with our brother Elder Mukasa Dada. Mukasa Dada, of course, no stranger to this program, and civil rights leader, field secretary of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. He joins me on the phone lines on the occasion of the 74th, just a day ahead, the 74th anniversary of the birth of our elder, now ancestor, Kwame Ture. We go live to the phone line. Mukasa Dada, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very kindly.
All right, we're very happy that you could. As we rememory and recall and remember our brother Kwame Ture, ready for the revolution always, making the unconscious conscious, just quoting some of his own phrases that he would use from time to time. A little bit about background about you, because you were very, very active, Mukasa Dada, in SNCC, as a civil rights leader in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Can you talk about those early days and how you met Kwame Ture, who was then Stokely Carmichael?
Yes, I was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. My name was Willie Ricks then of SCNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and we were fighting against racism and colonialism or apartheid inside the United States. And we were being, we had to go in back doors, say yes to all white people. We absolutely had no human rights, and SNCC formed and started fighting for those human rights. We did that as youth, and I met Kwame Ture on the battlefield. We were in different places, part of the Freedom Rides, part of fighting for the right to vote, part of City Movement, and we were demonstrating and protesting against this government and the system that black people were suffering under, and we met on the battlefield. I don't know exactly what city we met. I know we met in Washington, D.C. early on when he was a student at Howard University at a conference. We met in Americus, Georgia. We met in Mississippi, and at some point we became best friends, and we stayed together, lived together, traveled together, and fought many, many battles together. So Kwame Ture Stokely became a very close comrade of mine over the years.
And as a matter of fact, and we have spoken about this before yourself in this space, that the phrase, the term black power, actually coined by you and made popular by Kwame Ture. Can you tell us about that process?
Well, Stokely and I, early on in Lowndes County, Alabama, we formed the Black Panther Party, and Stokely was one of the first people to call for black people to arm themselves and not be nonviolent in the civil rights movement. So we became known as a group inside the civil rights movement that was armed and fighting back. And then once we started the Black Panther Party, others called and asked if they form chapters, and that's how it became known as the Black Panthers for Self-Defense. And then right after then, Stokely became chairman of SNCC, and then right shortly after that, one of our comrades got shot named James Meredith, and Dr. Martin Luther King and all the civil rights leaders decided that we would carry that march on, and it was a march against fear, a march against terrorism, because black people were under terrorism in the state of Mississippi. They were blowing up churches in Mississippi. In the summer of '64, they blew up about 75 churches. They was assassinating people like Fannie Lou Hamer, Cheney, Swan, and Goodman, but our people were under extreme stress. And we marched from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi, 240 miles, where they bombed us, beat us, and what have you. But on that march, we called for black unity, we called for black power. And what we said, if we had power, they couldn't bomb us. If we had power, we wouldn't be hungry. If we had power, we wouldn't be living under this apartheid system. If we had power, we could have justice for ourselves. So our movement went on the offense. And when we went on offense with black power, we started calling for unity of our people. We started calling for our people to be proud of their hair, their nose, their lips, their skin, and their culture. And as black power grew, we began to be involved in rebellions where all the cities in this country, over 100 of them, went up in flames. And Kwame Ture was the spokesman for the rebellions in Detroit, Washington, D.C., where the cities were burned down. The mass of the people turned to Stokely-Carmichael, and he was a spokesman while other civil rights leaders ran from the rebellion because the people were fighting back. Stokely spoke out against the war in Vietnam, and that so black power guided us toward looking to linking our movement with the movement in the Caribbean, with the movement in Africa. Black power led us to join the liberation movements in Africa, Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Snake people were one of the first people to even rebel and demonstrate and go to jail fighting against the racist system of South Africa, fighting against imperialism in South Africa. So black power started, we started in Mississippi, and then it grew to be a worldwide concept that helped lead many young people to take guns, organize, and demand independence in places like Trinidad and other and South Africa and all over the world. So black power became an international cry, and black power became part of the Pan-Africanist movement, and we began to identify ourselves with Africa. We began to demand that the schools in this country put African history inside the universities. That's something that came out of the black power movement. We demanded that the students that go to the white schools organize black student unions. That's something that came out of the black power movement. And when the city started burning down, the government got so paranoid that it was forced to say that anybody that got federal money had to hire a few Africans and get us jobs and what have you. So it was just part of a national, worldwide rebellion, and black power became part of the Pan-African movement. And one of the main things that Kwame Ture concentrated on is giving our people an identity and letting our people know that we were Africans and that we all have to unite worldwide, not just in the United States, but we have to have worldwide unity, and that one of the common things that would bring us together is Africa. We're Africans, and he believed that we would never be free. Pan-African led us to believe that we would never be free until Africa's free, and we began to talk about Pan-Africanism, which is the total liberation, unification of Africa under socialism. And he began to talk about socialism, scientific socialism, and Dr. King himself talked about a redistribution of the wealth, which is socialism. We realized that we were being exploited, and that we began to see that this what we were fighting against was imperialism. And when we joined our movement with the anti-imperialist movement around the world, the Black Power movement joined in with Vietnam and demanded that the United States stop this imperialist war in Vietnam.
Sorry to interrupt. So that Black Power was for you, for Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and for those who were integrally involved in the struggle for freedom, the struggle against imperialism, that Black Power was more than a dream. Black Power was a call to action. It was a call for organizing and organization, because I hear you talked about how Black Power's concreteness was expressed through consciousness raising and so on, talking about the identity. For Kwame Ture, for yourself, that ideal of black power, is that still relevant now? And how does that fit into the unfinished revolution that our African people need to finish?
Well, black power just shows that we weren't free, and then black power pointed us against. When we went to Vietnam, we talked to Ho Chi Minh, and Ho Chi Minh guided us toward Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Toure, and we began to talk to them about black power and Mao Zedong of China. They began to explain to us that there was something called imperialism, and that we under attack by imperialism is more than just the little white sheriffs or the little white people that's blowing up churches, or more than the little white boy that going into church shooting at people, but it's imperialism, and these big multinational corporations and these governments are backed by imperialism, and they are in the military-industrial complex. And when we looked toward Africa, we saw that Africa was being exploited. Africa was the richest continent in the world, full of diamonds, gold, oil, rubber, and everything, but yet the people in Africa are hungry, starving, and don't have food to eat. So we recognize that the United States and other worldwide powers was raping Africa. And when we turned to Africa, we said that black power means the total liberation and unification of Africa under socialism, which is Pan-Africanism, and that we join in with the liberation movements in Africa. We join in with liberation movements all over the world, all the unjust systems in the world. We join in and tried to unite with them. They became our sister organization. So, yes, we still are being exploited. We still face the same racism that we faced 100 years ago, 300 years ago. Our people are being murdered in the streets of the United States daily. But this murder of African people is not just in the United States. It's in Brazil. It's in Colombia. I'm sure it's wide in the Caribbean. And it's all over the world. Black people, we are being exploited and murdered all over the world. And you know it's in the Congo. The Congo, in the last 5 years, 7 million people have been murdered and starved to death. And Somalia, they're dropping bombs on our people in Somalia. So this is a worldwide movement of the prison industrial complex. They round up all the African men. The jails and prisons are full of us around the world. So our people are hungry. We don't have nothing, and that we got to get what we want, depend on imperialism or these white races to feed us or clothe us, because they're not planning to do that. We have to take over Africa. We have to take what belongs to us in the world, and it will take a worldwide African revolution. So it's very clear that ain't nothing changed in terms of the exploitation of Africa and the exploitation of African people. We are suffering now as much now as we ever suffered in the world today, even though you have a couple of petty bourgeoisies here and there, but the masses of the people are suffering, and the only way out of this, as Kwame Ture would say, is revolution.
It's revolution and organization, and the thing for me in terms of how we view revolution, because Kwame Ture was very clear about revolution and talked about always being ready for the revolution. One of the last speeches, I heard him make, just before he got so ill, was when he talked about the necessity of organization in terms of the revolution, and he was he embodied that. He embodied organization in terms of what he was doing, in terms of what you all were doing. What is it? What's importance of thinking organization, of doing organization? Because another thing that Kwame Ture underscores is that we are not what we think or say we are. We are not what we hope, not what we pretend we are. We are simply what we do. How important is it to do organization for African people right now?
Well, African people, one of the things colonialism and imperialism has done, they've divided us up into so many pieces. They divided Africa up into over 50 different little countries. where they can exploit easier each country, each colonial power in the world, and then all the different multinational corporations got the piece that they want according to the resources that they rape. But then, and then.
Did we lose you there? All right, I think we might have lost our brother. All right, I think we did lose him. Speaking with Mukasa Dada, formerly known as Willie Ricks, we're talking about our brother Kwame Ture and Black Power. What was meant by Black Power? How was Black Power's concreteness expressed? We heard from Mukasa Dada about the grassroots campaigns for voting rights in the South, the countless meetings, the study groups, the alliances formed and dismantled, talked about the growth and the change, the business of raising and spending money. This is all part of how Black Power was actualized, operationalized among those young people at the time, and we're talking about the 60s and parts of the 70s. Jail time, street time, hospital time, some of the issues that Kwame Ture underscored. And if we're talking about jail time, there's a sister whose bond was just posted this morning, but she was arrested since Saturday because she did a simple act of climbing the pole in South Carolina, in Charleston, and took the Confederate flag down. I don't know if you know, Bree Newsome is a name that we should know. We're going to talk about it when we look at In Focus now. But one of the things Kwame Ture said about that is that when you organize, when they arrest me, I am out of jail in no time. I'm out of jail in no time. And that is because we are organized. So that Kwame Ture, Black Power for him, Black Power for, do we have Baba Dada Mukasa Dada back on the line? All right, we're waiting to get him back on the line. We lost him just now, 20 minutes after 7 o'clock. We are, I know, going a little bit over time, but we just wanted to wrap up that conversation with him. Operationalizing Black Power, the press releases, the world tours, all a part of that process. The birthing of SNCC, for example, the bodies and minds are sacrificed and sanctified, part of the process of the operationalizing Black Power. As we go back to the phone line, sorry about that, Mukasa Dada, you got disconnected. We have just about 3 minutes left, so I just wanted to wrap up with you as we were talking about how Black Power was operationalized and the work that was done there and the importance of Black Power as opposed to, say, justice or injustice. Kwame Ture talked to us about the importance of understanding the bigger picture. Is Black Power, do you think, that bigger picture in which we put all of these little issues, all of the events and so on, that we're working for a bigger ideal? Is that Black Power? Is that power? And how important is power?
Black Power is the total liberation and unification of Africa and the joining in with all our people in the Caribbean and the people outside of Africa, building one organization. And Kwame Ture talked about ideology where we began to think African, think as the African people, and fight for the liberation of Africa. And we must be organized in order to do that. And that's why we have to have leadership that talk about Pan-Africanism, talk about Africa. Black Power is nothing but extension of Pan-Africanism. Black Power is Pan-Africanism. And Marcus Garvey and men like Du Bois and Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, they're the forces that represent Pan-Africanism, represent Black Power. Black Power means you got to have land, you got to have an economic system that you control, you got to have a worldwide army that you can defend yourself against imperialism, and you got to have a worldwide army where you can, an organization where you can spread socialism and socialist ideals like the great nation of Cuba and places like Cuba has done and continue to do. But our primary cause is the liberation of Africa. We'll never be free until Africa is free. And until then, the United States and the imperialist powers and these big companies and the military-industrial complex will continue to commit crimes against Africa and crimes against African people.
Thank you so much, my brother Mukasa Dada, formerly known as Willie Rick, civil rights leader, field secretary of state.
Ready for the revolution. Long live Black Power. Long live Africa.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much. Ashe.
All right, goodbye.
Kwame Ture's his career was service. Kwame Ture was not concerned with issues, he was concerned with the system. One of the things that he underscored was the need to transform mobilization to organization. And he underscored also that not everyone who mobilized could organize, but that we all were needed in the Pan-African movement that would ultimately contribute to completing the revolution, or continuing the revolution at least. Our brother tells us that the struggle is never an event. It is a process, a continued eternal process. You know, one of the things that Kwame Ture talked about is the fact that we do not need we do not want money. And that was interesting. He says we don't want money. We don't want fame. We want power. Because he understood that it was through power, and wanted us to understand that once you had power, the rest would come. And how do we expect to get power? He says power comes from the organized masses. And how do we organize? We can organize all the people. Our brother Kwame Ture tells us around one thing, and that is truth. And how do you know the truth? Well, he says we know the truth from constant struggle against lies. We're Africans. End of discussion. The struggle from Negro to go from Negro to black was a difficult struggle. And he said that it's more difficult to go from black to African. The role of the media, the role of the masses, transformation, transforming mobilization to organization. Let us do this. Africa unite. Gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we speak with Mr. Charles Sinclair in Montego Bay as we continue to look at access to our beaches and the concerns regarding the Cornwall Beach in Montego Bay. Moving from the unconscious to the conscious. The first conscious act in organizing our people is to let them know who they are. All right, we're back with you. We must acknowledge and say congratulations to Professor Vereen Shepherd. I know a lot of you think that, oh yeah, she was already here, but the Observer reported last week that she was elected to the United Nations Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. For a lot of us, we thought, oh, but she was already there. But anyway, so this is a report from the Observer, and I haven't spoken to Vereen, but it's in the Observer, so I suppose there's a new twist to it. So the Observer says that this is the UN's a treaty body that is charged with seeing the international conversation on racial discrimination is implemented by the states that are party to the convention. And apparently there was a vote. And so she's been elected. So congratulations, Verena. I don't know if it is that way, it's stale news, but in any case, it's all over the social media also. Congrats to Verena Shepherd. We're going to go now to the phone lines to speak with my next guest, who is Mr. Charles Sinclair, Councillor Charles Sinclair, Councillor for the Montego Bay Northeast Division and a minority leader in the Montego Bay Parish Council. Last week, we spoke about the Cornwall Beach and the controversy surrounding the Cornwall Beach. And we spoke with the mayor of Montego Bay, Glendon Harrison, who told us that there were plans in place to change the status quo. seemed as if there were prohibitive prices locked into a lease, a 36-year lease, to one company that had, it seemed, the right to lock people out. The beach, there should be access to the beach. High water mark is the magic term. The only thing with the high water mark situation is that for a lot of this, you will have to access the beach by boat. So the way the Beach Act is worded, private companies can purchase lands adjoining or on the beach, and there is a clause that suggests that the public would always have access to the beach. But as far as the high water mark, now I've done many interviews on this high water mark thing, many interviews, and I don't think I'm going to do any more about this high water mark, because the conclusion that I've come to, and no one has disagreed with me yet, is that this high water mark situation means that you have to go on a boat from probably the grill and come in on the boat just to go to the beach, so that there's a denial of access to the beach of Jamaican citizens across Jamaica. It's an issue that we have. The situation at Cornwall Beach is particularly troubling. And let me hear from Mr. Charles Sinclair, Councillor Charles Sinclair, if they know about the updates to this. Mr. Sinclair, good morning. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well, very well. I know that there is a vexing issue in Montego Bay regarding the Cornwall Beach. We spoke with the mayor last week. Don't know if you heard that interview, but
no, unfortunately not.
At the end of the day, what the mayor told us is that there is a document that has been submitted that suggests that there will be a change to the situation. Tell me from you, in your own words, what the real problem is.
All right. I'll just give you a brief synopsis. Cornwall Beach is a property that is owned by the St. James Parish Council. It is the best public beach facility that exists in St. James. It previously was property which was leased by the council to the TPDCO, and a part of the covenant of the arrangement that we had with TPDCO many years ago was that they had to have the beach open for public use. TPDCO reneged on that. So in 2006, the beach area was reverted to the St. James Parish Council. In order to have it remain open for the public use, the council entered into an arrangement with a private entity, Waterfront Investments Limited, and the lease arrangement had it that they had to operate it as a public bathing beach, in addition to other things that they could do there. But it had to be a public bathing beach. All of a sudden, since 2014, I'm seeing a document, which the first time I saw it was when I started to get wind from locals to say that the rate to access the beach was increased from $500 to $1,500. And in making those inquiries, I was presented with a document called an Addendum 2, in which it indicated that the lease arrangement with Waterfront Investments Limited was increased by 30 years beyond the original termination date with them, which was 2021. So they now have it up to 2050.
So let me ask you this. With Waterfront, because the mayor told us last week that it appears as if, and his thinking on it was that Waterfront has been acquired by the Camerons, or Waterfront.
That's not true.
So Waterfront is still Waterfront.
Waterfront Investments Limited, if you check with the registrar of companies, which I have done, and I saw another media house making a check, they indicated who the principals are. But persons, because of this issue that have come up, I've gotten three different stories from persons in Waterfront, from persons attached to the Cameron, and from other persons who have been in dialogue with them. They have given three different stories as to how the Cameron came into the picture.
So the Cameron is actually in the picture?
The Cameron is in the picture. No. The question is, how did they get there?
All right. The Cameron has acquired the property, or is it still Waterfront?
There is no lease arrangement with the Cameron. The Cameron is not a signatory to any document with the council. The Cameron is not mentioned in any of the documents with the council as being in possession of the property. But the factual situation that has started since December of last year is that the Cameron, they have taken it over. The signage that is there identifies the Cameron. If you wish to access the beach paying this high rate of entry, you have to go to the Cameron desk to purchase access. I'm told by some persons that
1,500. We've been told that too, and it's an issue that we have looked at before with the UDC. And the UDC, many months ago when we first brought this issue up in this space, pointed us to the parish council. And here we are again, because since the first complaint, and we spoke with the UDC, we have had development in terms of you have an extension to the lease, which is now 50 years. Additional, well, you're talking about 36. So I spoke with the UDC many months ago.
In relation to
this yeah, but the UDC pointed us to the parish council. That's what I'm telling you.
Not UDC.
No, I know. That's what. No, I'm just giving you the background to us looking at this issue for a while, because the complaints were coming into IRFM regarding what was happening at Cornwall Beach.
Understood.
Right. So when we were pointed to the parish council told us then of that people would have access to the beach. But here we are being told now that yes, there is access, but the access is prohibitive. And you're saying this is the situation, the current situation. But let me just say this to you. I heard the mayor told us last week that the Cameron has sent a document to NEPA and somehow to the parish council that what is going to happen is that there will be two charges to go to access the beach. One that will give you everything that comes with the Cameron Hotel, and then another for locals, for Jamaicans, to access the beach who don't need anything else. What have you heard that, and what do you think about that?
Let me say this to you. All of that is a sham. I am prepared to say that no.
Yes.
I have been in discussion with persons who are connected to the Cameron. They have not said that to me. One. I have also looked at what is being proposed by the Cameron, which is that they want to do a development on the property which is adjacent to the beach property. But if you look at what is being proposed, it is going to exclude locals, because all-inclusive does not, as a policy, if you check all-inclusive, you can't just walk through their properties. You can't walk through the buildings. They don't like intermingling between persons who are outside of the hotel.
Exactly.
Unless you come in and buy a day pass.
Yeah, there's no access to beaches that way.
Normally cost you at least $100 US.
Right. And this is the situation now. What is
$600?
What is...
No, can I just say this? If you look on the website of the Cameron and see what is written there, it says, our hotel chain continues with the recent acquisition at Cornwall Beach.
So they bought the beach?
Pardon me?
They bought the beach?
Well, I don't know. They use the word acquisition. I am just reading it as I have printed it from their website. You can go on the website of Royal Decameron and you will see this. Located next to the Royal Decameron, Montego Bay in the island of Jamaica. This charming location, renowned as the only great natural beach in the area, is characterized by its fine white sand and the turquoise blue of its sea that charms each visitor. The Cameron travelers will have the privilege of entering this natural space without any cost due to its proximity to the hotel. In the medium term, the construction of a hotel complex is planned so that its visitors may enjoy a new tourism infrastructure in the property behind this beach.
Right, 120 or 240 rooms or something.
I am being told 140 or something like that. I have not seen the plan. What came to the council, a council meeting in June of 2015 was a demolition plan where there are some buildings and facilities there, like there was a restaurant area which is present on the beach, office space where you could have a gift shop. Those have they made an application for demolition of those. No building application came to the council, so we have not seen as a council that building application.
The mayor told us that in the lease agreement, after 36 years, 3 generations, that hotel will be turned over to the people of Jamaica according to the lease agreement.
Yeah.
You're not buying. You're not buying.
I have seen that, but tell me now. You tell me. And anybody in Jamaica tell me. You are saying that somebody who expends their money is going to turn over that property. But let us read something that I've received. Because turning over and saying that you're going to turn over what? This says, the annex comprises an operation that will add to the existing inventory an additional 144 key guest room capacity. Right? All it will have is its satellite kitchen. I'm reading from a document, you know. It will have its own satellite kitchen, which will rely on HDCs, that's Hotel Decameron's central facilities.
May I ask you?
What would you if there's still a reliance on the central facilities in respect to the kitchen? What are you going to do with just having 144 rooms?
Yes, we have to read the fine print on that. But let me ask you.
Yeah. But let me take you further because I heard you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard you making a comment in the opening. And what we have to look at, you know, are things that relate to development. Because I'm not against development. My growth is that the development should not preclude public access to our beaches. Because one day, if we continue, and I can go through the history of St. James, we are going to have our locals jumping off any little piece of cliff into sea if they want to go to the beach.
Well, that's exactly the problem, and this is a problem.
We have lost Rosar Beach to IBO Star.
You have lost
everything. We have lost Damali Beach to Rio, and it is now being proposed that we lose the best facility. The Cameron has also said it. We will lose the best facility.
But Mr. Sinclair, I want to say to you definitively that we haven't lost anything because the laws ensure that we have access to the beach. So for me, there can be a rollback, but you have to have people standing up, not just when they're in opposition, but also when they're in government. Because I wish the conversation I'm having with you now, I wish I can have that conversation with anybody in government and even yourself when you're in government.
Can I say this to you? Secret Hotel was built when I was the mayor of Montego Bay. Secrets. The arrangement that was made with secrets, and we had to be involved in respect to that, and I must congratulate secrets. They had to construct what they call a beach club beside the hotel, which would facilitate locals getting to the beach. In addition to getting to the beach, they have constructed a restaurant. They have constructed a pool. So who want to go to pool, go to pool. Who want to go to the beach, go to the beach.
Well, I look back at that model because I've been looking at beaches across the length and breadth of Jamaica. But let me just, because in the interest of time, because we're totally out of time, and I'm going to revisit this conversation because it is something that we have taken on as a personal issue that we're paying attention to closely. Where do you go from here? What's going to happen now? I mean,
well, with the lack of transparency, and there are many other issues that I have heard, and we are not getting the answers to it. The development application has not come in, so we have not been able to express ourselves on that. But I have started because of what we have seen. We have placed a resolution on the table of the council. The debate started, I opened it, and from I opened it, it has been deferred on 2 occasions by the PNP majority in the council. They are saying that they want to go and do research. No, if they knew all of this, what research would they want to go and do?
Mr. Singh,
that is the reason that they have put forward. They want to go and do research.
So as it stands now,
we have also brought the matter to the attention of the Contractor General, for the Contractor General to look at it. And I will just point out to you that if and when the development application comes to the council, what we will be looking for in the first instance is whether the Town and Country Planning St. James Parish Provisional Development Order of 1978, which was amended in 1982. You know what is the 2 dates?
And you know what I don't like about where you're going with this, because we cannot continue to politicize the issue of the beach.
What I'm saying to you, it crosses. I agree with you.
We are going to take the politics out of it, though. I think we have a wider issue of public access and exclusion. And we have to stop politicizing it, Mr. Sinclair.
I appreciate what you are saying. I just mentioned the 2 dates to say that both sides should get one. No development will be permitted on land adjacent to the line of high water mark, which would preclude public access to
There you go. And
along the four.
All right.
That is a development order. Yes. That was signed off by the Town and Country Planning Authority and by the St. James Parish Council. It has not been amended, so somebody needs to come and talk to us about it.
As a matter of fact, we're looking at development orders across Jamaica for every parish, because we have a similar situation at Fisherman's Beach going on right now, where the St. Anne Development Order is in contradiction with what is happening down there. No, this is happening. The problem that we have is a systemic problem. It's not a Cornwall Beach problem. It's not a Fisherman's Beach problem. And it's not a Winifred Beach problem. And as I said to the mayor last week, we need a paradigm shift in our thinking in how we deal with public access. But we'll pick that up later. And I'll talk to you off air again, Mr. Sinclair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was Councillor Charles Sinclair, Council for the Montego Bay Northeast Division, Minority Leader in the Montego Bay Parish Council. We do have a problem. We have a problem. And we have a really big problem, because if everything we do, and it's about time, that black people in Jamaica begin to recognize and realize where we stand. And that is why even here on the Rock, it's important for unity among our groups, among ourselves, for black power. Because the only reason why our land is being taken from us in the way that it's been taken from us is lack of power. And so civil society groups that was so vocal just before the elections the other day, against Bruce Golding and so on, every single member, well, barring maybe one or two, have been given a position on a PNP board. And what's the result of that? Where are the members of the civil society groups? They are now sitting on boards and they have been silenced. So when there's so you went from among us to show that while you were with us, you were not of us. And so one of the things that we have to recognize, because we keep getting the really dirty end of a stick all the time as a people, as Kwame Ture says, it's about the masses, and we're going to have to mobilize ourselves from where we are to unite, to organize, and then to achieve power, so that we get rid of this racism, this classism, all kinds of ism that we're facing here on the island. Exclusion is a problem, and nobody cares, because everything is tribal. Everything is politics. It's PNP or JLP. And we will not stand by and watch beach access to beach be politicized, whether it is in Montego Bay, St. Mary, Portland, from Negril Point to St. Thomas Point. Even this little thing, we must win. Going to be talking about theologies of liberation in the next segment. The Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis is in the house, President of the United Theological College of the West Indies, pastor, teacher, missionary, joins us live in the studio. We're so happy to have my sister in the studio with us this morning.
Stay out late at night when you want to. Are there no signs in town? Say we've all no blacks around. You must be living at the
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
television again. An invention for fools.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go, what they still must be. Spirituality is a way of accepting the fact that there is a spiritual force in the universe larger than all of mankind. But someone had to come along and invent a word called God. And someone had to say of another God. Mine is better than yours. And someone had to create faith. Someone said, I have the true faith. Religion is the organization of spirituality into something that became the handmaiden of conquerors. Nearly all religions were brought to people and imposed on people by conquerors and used as the framework to control their mind. my main point here is that if you are the child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God's supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
All right, in this segment of the program, we're very, very, very happy to welcome to the studio my sister, the Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, and we're going to be talking in this segment about theologies of liberation. So I called her and I said, we need to talk about, well, I think I sent her an email and I said, I want to talk about that. And she said, I think we should, I said, I want to talk about liberation theology. And she said to me, I think we should rework that and say theologies of liberation. Good morning, Sister Marjorie.
Good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Why do we need to change that around from liberation theology to theologies of liberation?
Well, the reason it's kind of changed around is because it comes from more than one place.
Yes.
The term liberation theology came up with some modern ideas about how to reflect on the presence and the power of God in people's lives and struggles, and particularly people who are marginalized and oppressed. So one of the key phrases in liberation theology is the preferential option for the poor. So it's an idea that there is a priority on those who are poor and marginalized and dispossessed in some way. It started, the concept started formally coming out of Latin America, where ministers and priests who started to walk alongside people, particularly poor people, started to raise questions about how it is that God's power was relevant in their lives and the importance of looking at social, economic, and political issues. And then all over the world, people from different contexts, particularly what we call the two-thirds world, started to look at the Bible and theology from their perspective and their particular space that needed liberation. So you have black theology from the United States and South Africa. You have feminist theology, womanist theology, and I have another version. Asia, all kinds of places. People started to look at the Bible from their own perspective and to interpret from their own perspective, because the traditional interpretations that we got through the colonization process looked at it from a white European European perspective. So this is why I would say it is more accurate to speak of theologies of liberation, because it's not coming from one place. And I would also put forward the idea that long before the term theology of liberation was coined, we had our homegrown theologians. I would put Alexander Bedward in that category. I would put Marcus Garvey in that category. So and lots of people who were enslaved and who were saying, nah, me not accept say the Bible say me fi remain a slave. Something wrong with that picture. So they didn't have the label, but it's people who read the Bible from a perspective that says the Bible is here to liberate, and God's power can make something change.
And so that it is tied directly to the Bible and not necessarily to just you as a spiritual being, as a human being, created or not. So that this is something, liberation, you talk about Marcus Garvey, you talk about, and we throw Sam Sharp and Paul Bogle and so on.
Precisely.
Into it. But is it always tied back to the Bible? Does it always go back to the Bible?
No, you're getting really.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's an exciting prospect. Okay? Within Christianity, for the most part, they would say the way you come up with theology, which is the kind of philosophical way of looking at ideas of God, is that you have some main sources. Those would be the Bible, and that would be a major source for most people. But you also have tradition with a big T, which means the way in which things have been handed on. So, for example, if you go to a church like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the way the liturgy is done, the way they understand God operating, the use of icons, for example, these are things handed down. And that's a tradition. Okay? Then you also have reason, that we are beings with intellect. So we have to use our reason. So if you take something like HIV and AIDS, which is an area of work that we have been focusing on at the United Theological College since 2004 with great intentionality. Well, you're not going to find a quote in the Bible about HIV specifically. And certainly when I was trained in the 70s, that didn't even exist. So you have to bring intellect now to bear on emerging problems and also experience. What am I experiencing? And some people would add culture to that, because Jesus was a Jew. And reference would be made to his culture and the way in which he interacted with others about God would be earthed in that Jewish culture.
What does liberation mean when we talk about theologies of liberation? What are we looking at? It goes beyond just freedom, doesn't it?
Yes, it does go beyond freedom. And the truth is that the words that we translate from the Bible, like salvation and redemption, the kind of core base of it is liberation, in the original translation. Well, let me take women, which is a good example. You can interpret the Bible to say, for example, women should not hold areas of authority, because you can find a quote to say women must keep silent in the church, or some people say silence and not silent, but that's a whole other story. Women must submit to their husbands, and it's always interesting to me how it's quoted, because you take off one piece of it, that the women must submit, but you don't quote that the men must love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave his life for her.
Does it say that actually?
It does. And if you read it, the whole passage starts with submit one to another.
Yes.
Okay, so I would say the essence, in my interpretation, and I'm not the only person, of this notion of submission is mutual submission. And there's one theologian who wrote a book called, it will come back to me now, but a very important book on spiritual disciplines. And he said, Robert Foster is his name, that the essence of the discipline of submission is not always having to have your own way, and that it is mutual and it is not gender specific. So if you're in a marriage or in a group of any sort, in a family, if you must have your own way, irrespective of the needs of others or the dynamics, something wrong with that picture. You understand?
Yeah.
So what he's saying is that's the essence of it, that husbands must think about wives, wives must think about husbands, parents must think about children, children must think about parents. And that the gravamen, when you look at the whole thing, is that in relationships we don't just dominate and disrespect and disregard other people's feelings and so on. I can handle that interpretation
of
submission.
But let me, is there a contradiction? I've been looking at this, I've been talking to you about doing this, having this conversation for years now.
Yes.
Right? But is there an innate conversation, a contradiction in expecting theology to be liberating at any level? Isn't there almost incompatibility between processes of liberation and theology, especially if you're going to go to the... And I understand when you talk about it depends on how you interpret what you read and so on. But isn't there a contradiction there? Like they're not compatible at all, liberation and theology?
I am not of that view. There are those views, and different sociologists, for example, will have seen theology and religion as something that is restraining and conservative and protective of the status quo. And others have pointed to cases where theological and religious ideas cause change. No, these are contested. What I would say is this: if you believe in God or a higher power, one of the assumptions of that is that higher power has knowledge beyond what the individual human being has. Okay? So it means, therefore, that we don't have as individuals and in a particular point in time all the information that there is ever to have. Whether that's information about science, about any kind of discipline, and also information about God.
Sorry to interrupt you, sis. I'm getting... I know I don't have anything on apart from our microphones, but there's a feedback of what you're saying coming to me in delay. You're inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa, and we're talking about theologies of liberation, and my very, very special guest is the Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, President of the United Theological College of the West Indies, pastor, teacher, and missionary. I know I'd asked about the compatibility of theology with liberation or liberating processes. But can we go beyond that a little? Because I take the point you're making, and others have used it, and you mentioned people like Maulamu, Marcus Messiah Garvey, and so on. So that we've seen that in action. So what should liberation theology look like then in terms of the focus? And one of the reasons why I'd asked about the incompatibility is that two things. Let us go to the U.S. and then come back to Jamaica. Look at the recent massacre in Charleston. There was one white supremacist who talked about people just sat there and allowed themselves to be killed without fighting back. And we're saying that if they had a concept of liberation theology, then they probably would have fought back. All right, let me just say that, but I'll qualify in a little while. Also, you're looking at the images of a church, and you see, the picture of a white Jesus and so on in the first black church, or one of the most important black churches in South Carolina. So I'm saying, okay, so you have that, and then you have a whole forgiveness campaign that seems to be unknown. Everybody very, very muted in their forgiveness of this this racist. And then you come to Jamaica, where in a lot of the churches, and I'm talking more about the charismatic churches or the Pentecostal churches and so on, you can't even mention Africa. Identity is not something, and it doesn't matter as long as God is white. So nothing is liberating about those processes. And for me, then the question becomes, what is liberation theology, and what should it look like in those two contexts in particular?
I think that we live in a world and within ourselves with all kinds of contradictions. And we have to try to find the spaces where we can work these things out safely. All right, let me give you one example that's not from Christianity. My good friend and sister Imani Tafara Armour wrote an article some years ago. It's in a book called Chanting Down Babylon, where she looked at some of the contradictions within Rastafari and spoke of the fact that while the Babylon system was being challenged, within the process there were certain issues having to do with gender, with race, well, probably more skin color, skin shade, and class.
Yes.
That were there. Now, I think it is part of our process that whether it is within Christianity, within Rastafari, within the Pan-African movement generally, we start with the intellectual decolonization, but then we have to deal with the internalization of these concepts. And I think these are things that will take time to work through. So emancipate yourself from mental slavery is more than a slogan. It's a process that we need to engage in and we need to deal with consciously and to hold ourselves accountable. And I think certainly for the church in the Caribbean, the Rastafari movement was very important, because I think it, among other things, performed a prophetic function in the church, for the church, to challenge the church about its reticence in dealing with blackness. And it did have an impact. Along with Black Power, all of those things that were happening, the development of the Caribbean Conference of Churches, for example, was one of the places where, coming from the 1970s, Caribbean theologians now started to deal with the images. So we had a Sunday school material called Fashion Me People, developed by the late Dr. Joyce Bailey of the Methodist Church. She was the editor. But there were writers from across the Caribbean. And these Sunday school books did not have a white Jesus or Judas being the only black disciple, as was traditional. But Jesus and everybody there was black. And of course, some people did have problems with that.
Of course,
but there have been attempts within the church, the Caribbean Conference of Churches being a very important place, where the hymn writing, the academic work was looking at the Bible from Caribbean perspectives, and that included the images of Jesus and the images of people who were in Sunday school material.
From a theoretical perspective, what is liberation theology concerned with? You mentioned at the beginning the focus on the poor and coming out of Latin America and so on, but can we look at some of those?
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum, the Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, my very, very special guest, as we talk about theologies of liberation. All right, so let us look now at Gutierrez. Interestingly, a weird thing happened, because every morning I come here, and I've been doing it for years, quoting Gutierrez, not knowing that he actually wrote the book on liberation theology. I've been woke up in it, but just taking bits and pieces from him. And one of the things that I quote here a lot is what he says about the denunciation of injustice, implying the rejection of the use of Christianity to legitimize the established order. But in essence, that is what happens. And I know we don't just want to focus on Christianity, because we have Hinduism, Judaism, and so on and so forth. But theoretically, what are the issues that liberation theology is concerned with?
Two interesting areas, if I use biblical categories, would be shalom, or peace, and notions of eschatology, the end times. Now, peace can be interpreted as absence of conflict, but that's not the biblical understanding of peace. Yes. Shalom means wholeness of community. Justice, all of that is included. So our friend Peter said you can't have peace without equal rights and justice. Exactly. That's biblical.
Yes.
Because you can't say peace when there is no peace. You can get a kind of pseudo peace by police or military locking down every protest. But that's not peace.
Yeah.
Peace has to mean that the environment is protected, that all human beings have access to the basic things that they need in life, to justice, and that there is reconciliation within the community. So in order to do that, some people can't own 10% own 80% of the wealth and the rest are starving. That's not peace. And so the liberation theologians now started to challenge, based on the Bible and based on what was happening, the need to have what they call praxis. So you don't just read the Bible and think, but you have to act, you have to reflect. So what now does the church do? What does a pastor do? When there is injustice, when there is hunger, when there is poverty, when there is marginalization and people have no access to affecting the decisions made in their country and so on. These were some of the things. So one of the interesting liberation theologians in our side of the world is also James Cone, who wrote Black Theology. And that theology was challenging the racism. He pointed out what has been pointed out in other disciplines, that European thought forms are European thought forms. They are European, they are coming from a particular context, yes. But they have been presented to us as the norm. You see what I'm saying? So European theology is theology, but black theology is black theology. James Cone was saying European theology is white theology and it's racist theology. It is not a universal theology. And then the feminists were saying this white, including the white feminists, this theology is male patriarchal theology. It does not include the voice of women. God is not only white, God is male. Only men can be priests or ministers. And so they challenge those categories to say, as a woman, something is wrong with this picture. Then you have the black women, the women who say, yeah, but the black church is patriarchal and the feminists are racist. So for black women, some would call themselves black feminist theologians, so some would call themselves womanist theologians based on Alice Walker's categories. And the person for the womanist theologian is Hagar in the Bible, who is victimized at least 3 ways: race, class, and gender. Whereas the other woman in the Bible, in the story, which is Sarah, wife of Abraham, although there's a gender element, she's in a different class position. So for the black women, it becomes a kind of paradigm of black women and white women. You know, one of the big ways in which this came out is the question that was asked of black women in the United States in run-up to the first Obama win. Who are you going to vote for, Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama? The black women said, duh, Barack. Right? Yes, because for womanist theologians, including, by the way, lesbian black women, the protection of the community is important. And they are saying they cannot be part of a separatist feminist agenda that does not include men. Because, yes, we want to stand up for women's rights, and we will tussle with the black men about it, but we're not destroying the black community. It's not over against the black men. We have a duty for the development and the protection of the entire black community. So these are some of the ways in which, if you understand, from a perspective, people bring more to the table. And the other thing the womanist theologians would say is that we accept that we come from a particular perspective, and our perspective is not necessarily the whole truth. So what we need is dialogue. And I say to you, as a black woman, this is how I see it. You say to me, as a black man, this is how I see it. As a white woman, this is how I see it. As an Asian woman, this is how I see it. Let's sit down and share our perspectives, and in this, something greater. I think that sense, which is the kind of way in which the Jewish tradition dealt with theology, all of these different schools, is not just for fight, but is a kind of basic understanding that we have to dialogue. And Rastafari, I went to a very interesting bingy. We can talk about that in England. And I was just amazed at the debate that was taking place in the middle of the bingy about how you interpret a particular piece of scripture.
Yeah, and you see, all right, I know I'm coming from left field and keep veering off topic a bit, but it is because the uniting factor in all of this is the Bible.
Yes,
and it is usually is there, from all these perspectives, is there also, with 3 minutes before cash point, let us think about it, the development or the seeking out of new texts? In other words, at what point of liberation, in the liberating process, or that we throw that out, to say, well,
some people are open to it, others are not. So there is an African-American scholar called Anthony Pinn, who wrote a book called Varieties of African-American Religion. And his main idea was that Christians and theologians should not just explore Christian theology. And they should not just see black people's experience only as Christian. So he looked at other things, including humanism, Islam, and so forth. Certainly at the United Theological College, we have been in dialogue through the Interfaith Council with other religions, and there has been a very strong emphasis on the African presence in religion through Rastafari revival. Reverend Ashley Smith, a former president, is one of the outstanding scholars who has been looking at the significance of African religion and thought form for us as Christians.
My very special guest is the Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis. We're talking about theologies of liberation, and had a quick conversation with Dr. Lewis. And one of the things that as usual, it's well known in this space, it is my contention and my concern with how the Bible is viewed. Dr. Barashango, who, elder now, talked about black people, Africans, as peoples of the Bible. And I think if we see things that way, what difference would that make?
Well, let me talk a little bit about how we interpret the Bible.
Yes.
Because we have different interpretations, and we have to understand.
Yeah, hold the line for me, Cole. I'll come right to you shortly.
One traditional way of looking at the Bible is going back to who wrote the particular book and the background to that. They call that historical critical method. Okay? So you go back to what was originally the situation, who the audience was, who wrote it, and then you apply it from there.
Yeah.
You have people who just deal with the text itself without going into any background. So you will take up the text and you would maybe just take out pieces of it. A good friend of mine spoke of the dangers of taking text out of context, where you can say the Bible says there is no God.
Yes.
The fool says in his heart there is no God. But if you pick it out, you could actually get the opposite.
Yeah.
But there are ways of looking at the text itself that also can be liberating. Some people use contemplation and so on, and use the imagination. So you say, whose voice is not heard, who doesn't speak in the text. Let's take one nice black one for black people. The Epistle to Philemon. No. There is work done by historian Mary Turner, where she quotes a catechism developed by Wesleyan ministries in the days of enslavement, where a class of 14-year-old boys would be asked questions like, was Onesimus a good slave? And they were to say, no, he was not a good slave, because he was a thief and a runaway. And then she would ask, or the missionaries would ask, well, what does religion do to slaves? And it basically makes them good and so on. So you have that interpretation of that text. Then you look at somebody like Reverend Dr. Burchell Taylor, who is the pastor at Bethel Baptist Church, who said that is foolishness. Is Onesimus, by running away and saying and being converted, is now the real actor who forces Paul and Philemon to say slavery can't operate within the church. But Onesimus doesn't speak at all. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
So you have these two divergent interpretations, and part of it is the silence of this man who runs away and says, nah, me not been a slave. But
very good point.
But it's being interpreted
by
different people coming from different locations. For one, Burchell Taylor, it is Onesimus by what he did that now is the agent of the liberation and creates a situation where the whole Christian community has to now interrogate their acceptance of the slavery within the wider society.
So that's the lens that you look through.
The lens that you look through is very, very important. And so we come to the reader. Who is reading this text? Right? When I read the story of the Levite's concubine, right, where this woman is thrown out to be gang raped, and her husband, a Levite, push her and say, get up, right? The evidence suggests that he was abusive. She ran away from him and so on. She doesn't speak the whole time. So as a woman, I have to say, where is God in this? And what is this woman's voice in the text? Now, I'll tell you one about that. This is the book of Judges, and the key to interpreting the book of Judges, which has some of the most awful stories, is a phrase that is repeated. There was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was pleasing in their own sight. So they're saying that's what happens when you have chaos, but this woman doesn't speak.
Wow, this is really, really interesting conversation we're having. I want to go to the phone lines with just a few minutes to go. Let me take this call. We might have to keep Dr. Marjorie Lewis here until 10 o'clock.
Come to UTC and join us.
Hello, caller. Hello? Yes, greetings, Hotep. Go ahead.
Yes, Kabo. Yeah, man. We liberation theology. We have to commend people like Robert Astley Rogers, who went ahead and created an original text to liberate the black people, you know.
Yes.
The royal parchment, the Holy Pibby.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, even though they use the same old English language that the Bible represented in,
yes.
You know, but that text was a very, very, very pivotal text to liberate black people. He has a commandment there.
Yes, that's
a commandment.
Yeah.
That really speak to us, knowing ourselves, being self-reliant, and identifying Ethiopia and Africa as our liberation.
Thanks a lot, comment. You're driving, and so it's also, well, are you outside? So it's pretty windy.
I'm outside.
Yeah, so we're just about 2 minutes to go before news time. Let me try and get in another call. But thank you so much for reminding us of the Holy Pibby, all right?
Yeah, man, and the Royal Baptist School of Black Supremacy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
All right. Hotep? Hotep, my brother, go ahead.
Yes, let me say Tenestinin to both of you.
Tenestinin.
I'm a Rastafarian. My name is Rasti. I deliberately did that. The Emperor Haile Selassie, most of what is happening in the world now, he has the answer for them in a lot of his speeches. For example, in one of his speech, he said, theology and ideology is not spirituality. It is complete different energy or entity from the human spirituality. Human spirituality is pure and can survive on its own without theology or ideology.
Thank you so much for that, my brother. We have to go. Thank you. You want to make a quick comment on that?
I know you're running out of time, and here is where I am at. I want to start black people's struggle not from the Bible. Sounds strange?
Not at all.
I would like to see us. I go to Pan-African meetings and I get very frustrated. I mean, we can spend time cussing Christianity, cussing this one. I want black men to be out of prison.
Yes.
Right? I've worked in England. I've done a year in the United States. And I'm a Jamaican.
Yes.
And in those three contexts, some of the brightest of the black men are overrepresented in prison.
Yes.
In the United States, I am told that the prison industrial complex takes the grade 3 grades and can predict from that how many prisons to build down the road. Why can't we, whether you're Rasta, Muslim, Christian, take those same statistics and say we are not going to surrender our men and boys to the prisons? So my view is that we should look at, let's take one or two major issues that affects all black people, come together to change that, and in the process we can have the reasoning.
I know we have just a few seconds before news. But here we have another conundrum, because do we deal with issues or do we deal with system? Because I think even when you talk about the prison industrial complex, don't we have this issue of the people being threatened, the private sector, the privatization of prisons, and you know, the government, the states now being sued if you can't fill the beds and so on, and black people become that. And this is where Ture.Crime, Ture, I think, comes in very important for looking at the weaknesses in the system, as you're saying, among ourselves in terms of lack of organization, whether we talk about injustice or we talk about power, and what does that mean?
And that is one of the another aspect of liberation theology, which used social analysis. They claim that they were communists, but the point is there were tools in Marxism that were helpful. They were not Marxists, but social analysis, class analysis, and those things were important. And I would say we have a history. Enslavement was a system. Segregation was a system. Apartheid was a system. And now we have a neoliberal economic system that is marginalizing black people and people of color all over the world. So I'm saying I would like to suggest that we go to this principle of praxis in liberation theology, where you have action, reflection, action. You can't have one without the other. And that will help us to make the connection between the personal and the individual and the local things and the wider global systems. But this is my sermon this morning. That as black people, we focus on what are our problems, come together, do the reasoning, and move to change for the better.
As a matter of fact, that is today's theme for the entire program. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. The Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis. And by the way, you're saying to people, come to the United Theological College.
Yes.
These are the kind of conversations.
These are the conversations. HIV and AIDS counseling training, that's one of our major issues. And here we can go in more in depth about liberation theology, the Bible, and so all of those issues of spirituality.
All right. I really appreciate your coming in, sis. The Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis there talking to us about liberation theology.
Jamaica's non-aligned news voice.
Good morning. I am Natalie Campbell with the local and international headlines. Telecoms provider Digicel is reporting that more than 1,200 mobile customers have ported into its network over a 48-hour period. This follows the recent introduction of number portability, where customers of Lime and Digicel can switch networks and retain their numbers. Digicel has also announced 3 offers to potential customers, which the company says have resulted in scores of customers lining up outside dealer stores. Digicel's Chief Operating Officer Sean Latty says the response to the offers has been overwhelming and very positive. Last week, Lime said it received scores of requests from persons wishing to switch to its mobile service. Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller says government will press ahead with the economic reform program, noting that Jamaicans stand to benefit from the debt reduction and growth-inducing measures. The program is aimed at achieving fiscal consolidation, macroeconomic stability, high levels of economic growth, job creation and social protection for the most vulnerable sections of the population. The Prime Minister said the government, since assuming office just over 3 years ago, has worked hard to bring the country's fiscal house in order and will remain disciplined and committed in seeing the reforms through to successful completion. Residents of Morant Bay and surrounding communities are expected to benefit from the renovation of the health centre in the St. Thomas capital. The $32 million project, which is being financed by the Sugar Transformation Unit of the Agriculture Ministry, is to be completed in another 3 to 4 months. The project involves concrete works, electrical installation, walling and masonry, installation of finishes, carpentry, tiling, plumbing, exterior works, installation of windows and doors. Speaking at the recent groundbreaking ceremony for the project, Health Minister Dr. Fenton Ferguson said this work to improve primary health care will greatly ease the pressure on the secondary health care system. Speaker of the House of Representatives Michael Parrott has called on parliamentarians to speak out against the illicit trade and irresponsible use of small arms and light weapons. The House Speaker made the appeal as he addressed the recent opening session of the 2-day parliamentary forum on small arms and light weapons in Kingston. Mr. Parrott, in urging parliamentarians to take action, said it is estimated that there are at least 639 million small arms and light weapons in circulation across the globe, and that each year more than 8 million guns and 16 billion rounds of ammunition are produced. In news overseas, organizers of a party at an amusement park in Taiwan have been detained for questioning after a fire tore through crowds at a party. More than 500 people were injured in the incident when a colored powder apparently ignited after being discharged from the stage onto the audience. Footage showed people panicking and screaming, and inflatable water toys used as stretchers. Some 182 injured are in intensive care. Figures are not yet available, but officials said many of the victims appear to be in their 20s or younger. Some of them breathed in the powder, causing respiratory problems. Finally, people in the Tunisian resort town of Sousse have held a march to denounce the attack in which at least 38 people, most of them tourists, were killed by a gunman on a nearby beach on Friday. The crowds gathered late yesterday at a hotel also targeted by the attacker. They marched through the town expressing sympathy with relatives of the victims. Tunisia's Prime Minister Habib Essir announced a security clampdown after the attack claimed by Islamic State. He said army reservists would be deployed to tourist sites. He added that about 80 mosques accused of inciting violence would be closed within a week. Those were the local and international headlines. News next at 11:45. From the IRI FM newsroom, I am Natalie Campbell.
Natalie, should I play it? This is my favorite Bob Marley, right? Let me just play my song. Come on, man.
You got to pay your dues. I'ma do you, baby. Let me feel rude.
You okay, Roger?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
Do it with your bad side.
Yes, you know, I mean, nowadays, these, I mean, you have certain aspects and certain segments of society who are saying these songs are homophobic.
Do it with your bad side?
Yeah, there's, you don't know it go. I mean, when a man proposes his love to a woman, it's now being seen as homophobic. in certain quarters. Yes.
Easier, man.
No. You remember, it has been happening, remember?
I don't know that.
Yeah, man, we had an artist who went to the National Stadium and was singing in front of thousands of people and was singing and it was the same thing, and the next day it was all over the place. She was promoting former food.
But was it bad, sir?
Yes. No, we know, so it's but I'm telling you that certain aspects of society now we see in these songs and so much for when a man proposes to love to a woman.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't know.
Do it with your bad self. Gotta do it with your girl. Do it with your bad self. Okay. It's my favorite Bob Marley, by the way.
Are you telling me to do it? Thank you, woman, 'cause every man needs.
All right, we're going to be going to the phone lines to speak with Rahu Imatep Kimet Bam on an essay on crime in Jamaica.
Holistic Lifestyle presents Holistic Healing Expo, featuring world-renowned Dr. Sabi. Live performance by Iwayne and Yato Safari. Music by yours truly. Purtle River Park, Ocho, Sunday, July the 5th. Gate opens 10 a.m. Admission 2,000. Kids 700. Sponsored by Island Eyewear. Be there.
Free Africa. Running Africa ni. Ahaye Jamaica. So what take kakase boso kadia.
All right. In focus now, Bree Newsome. We must honor and remember her name. Bree Newsome, the woman who scaled a flagpole in front of his South Carolina State House on Saturday, is somebody that we're thinking of this morning. She removed the Confederate flag. Lots of conversation, lots of debate about the flag. Well, she actually scaled it, and you can see the pictures online. We removed the flag today because we can't wait any longer, Bree Newsome, 30, said in a statement released by activist group Blackbird, which was helping out with press but did not facilitate the event itself. We can't continue like this another day. It's time for a new chapter where we are sincere about dismantling white supremacy and building toward true racial justice and equality. Bree Newsome now faces a charge of defacing monuments on state capitol grounds, and we understand that she posted bond today. The offense carries a possible fine of up to $5,000 and up to 3 years in prison. Bree Newsome did not act alone, but was part of a larger group of activists who wanted to see the flag come down, a multiracial group of activists. So she actually scaled the flagpole and took that Confederate flag down. Also in focus now, within hours of a Supreme Court decision legalizing same-sex marriage in the USA, an array of conservatives, including the governors of Texas and Louisiana, and religious groups called for stronger legal protections for those who want to avoid any involvement in same-sex marriage, like catering a gay wedding or providing school housing to gay couples based on religious beliefs. They demanded establishing clear religious exemptions from discrimination laws, tax penalties, or other government regulations for individuals, businesses, and religious affiliated institutions wishing to avoid endorsing such marriages. The Governor Abbott of Texas, a Republican, issued a directive to state agencies saying that employees should not be penalized for refusing to act in violation of their beliefs. He said no Texan is required by the Supreme Court's decision to act contrary to his or her religious beliefs regarding marriage. They're looking at a maze of treacherous future court cases, they say. Leading up to this, Jim Daly, the president of Focus on the Family, a prominent conservative Christian group based in Colorado Springs, said he was worried that Christians would be subjected to prejudice and persecution if they stood against same-sex marriage. He also said that a variety of issues were likely to be litigated. And these issues included whether the ruling could force Christian universities to house the same-sex couples in dorms for married students, and whether cake makers and florists would have to work at same-sex weddings. Have you heard that the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has expressed support for the Caribbean call for reparations from their former colonial powers? He did this in an address to the country on Wednesday. Maduro expressed his support for those 15 Caribbean nations seeking reparations from former slave trading nations, including the UK, France, Spain, the Netherlands, Portugal, Norway, Sweden and Denmark. Maduro actually said, and I quote, "Our brothers from the Caribbean community and Ture.Crime have raised their voice to demand Europe for one of the greatest holocausts in history, the African, during which 50 million women and men of our African grandparents were kidnapped from their land, from their roots, to be brought to America as slaves." He said, "Europe must indemnify the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean for the African Holocaust." So that's the president of Venezuela. The call for reparations came after the Venezuelan president paid tribute to the independence fighter Ture.Crime, the only black military officer who fought against the Spanish in the independence army of Simón Bolívar. All right, so that's news coming out of Venezuela. The U.S. has told France that it is no longer spying on its leaders following disclosure by the group WikiLeaks. Documents published last week show the National Security Agency spied on President François Hollande and his two predecessors from 2006 to 2012, including listening to and recording cell phone conversations. The White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said President Obama has assured his French counterpart François Hollande that they are no longer spying on him. Can you imagine if they're spying on Hollande and Merkel and presidents? What about us? Can you imagine little old us? In Nigeria, a grand jury in the U.S. has indicted 3 state employees over the death of a 21-year-old Nigerian native in a Savannah, Georgia jail. Matthew Ajibade died on New Year's Day of what the coroners described as blunt force trauma, including abrasions, lacerations, skin injuries about the head and other areas of the body. At the time of his death, he was restrained in an isolation cell after authorities said he became combative during an altercation that injured deputies. On Wednesday, 2 former jail employees and a contract health worker were all charged with involuntary manslaughter among the counts. 9 Chatham County deputies were fired in connection with the death. Then we're going to the phone lines now to speak with Dr. Arthur Green on his latest publication, an essay on crime in Jamaica. And we did say earlier that Professor Shepherd did send me a note regarding her appointment. We'll tell you about that in a little while. All right. Dr. Arthur Green standing by. His latest publication, an essay on crime in Jamaica. And that is now available. Published, of course, in the African name Rahu Imhotep Kemet Ba. Morning, Arthur.
Morning.
All right, so here we are now with your latest publication. The first book was actually about solutions. What was the title of the first book?
Practical Solutions for Jamaica, a Nation in Crisis.
All right, and it's followed up by the second book. Can you give us a synopsis of the first book, what that entailed?
Well, it was looking at some of the major social problems, crime among them, the political divide, democracy, and the kind of social chaos that we have been having really over the past 5 decades as such, and looking at some of the possible ways in which we could implement corrective measures to address these problems.
All right, as you said, practical solutions. The second publication is an essay on crime in Jamaica. What is the background to the writing of this book, and when was it published?
Well, this book was published on the 31st of October 2013, and essentially just becoming gradually aware of the increasing crime rate in the country, especially since 1980 coming up into the 90s, 2000s, where the crime rate had gone to over 1,000 murders per year. One could not help but actually be concerned with such an alarming thing. And one of the ways in which, I address these concerns is really to look at it and to try to see if we could come up with some solutions. But it also forced us to look back into the history of Jamaica as far back as the coming of the Europeans, where and coming they literally wreaked genocide on the Tainos, and then later on, when more Europeans came and they started what was really a criminal oligarchy known as the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans, and the end result of that itself, ironically, was sanctioned by none other than Las Casas himself, a Catholic priest, who suggested the use of 12 Africans to replace every one of the fallen Tainos. So that was an interesting finding there. And looking along, coming up to emancipation, we see how the coercion that was used against our people, the brutalization and so on. As far back as 1865 with the uprising, and the response at that time of the state, the colonial state, to that uprising was actually the formation of the JCF, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, 2 years later, was formed as a response to enslaved Africans fighting for their rights. So when I look at this historical context, you could realize the dilemma of actually determining who or what was a crime, and depending from whose lens you are looking, because Vogel and the other Africans there were well within their rights, under oppression, trying to get equal rights and justice and a better way of life for themselves. On the other hand, the colonialists who were in charge were adamant to put them down by brute force. And in so doing, the system was implemented that was used for containment. So that was also an interesting finding to see that Jamaica, coming through the years of the pirates, and so we have a long history of crime, to be put it bluntly. So that historical context also was something that I had to focus on a bit.
Of course, from the moment the Europeans landed, I mean, it was violence, it was atrocities, it was massacre in terms of the first people, the Tainos, and so the land since that time has been what it has been, which is almost an incubator for violence, crime and violence. So in terms of shifting that paradigm, we'll get there. But what crimes have you highlighted in the essay, and why?
Well, we focus mainly on the horrendous crimes such as murders, rapes, severe and horrendous domestic violences, and we really highlighted those because they were very, very, not only the incidents of them, because in fact, as I said, up in the 2000, late 90s and even beyond, we were actually having over 1,000 murders per year, and that had put us at that time, and still until now, probably in the top 3 crime rate, top crime countries of the world. So this was something of a horrendous proportion which could not be ignored. And at the same time, the domestic violence, the rapes and so on, which were also in high proportion and high incidences. But I highlighted these because of the profound social impact that these particular crimes have on the society. It came at tremendous cost. For example, look at the scenario of, say, 2 students, one killing the other at school, and we have 2 victims because the deceased is a victim and the perpetrator is also a victim. But not only that, playing out in the school community, it would have also a severe psychological and traumatic effect on the school community. Now, these type of courts, if they were to be really properly addressed, where you have to get prolonged counseling and, reparations for the loss of the family and so on, all of these are things that we have to take into account. Plus, the potential loss. Nobody knows sometimes these untimely deaths, what contributions these individuals could have made that could have benefited the society at large. So the loss is actually incalculable. In the wider society, it's also the same thing. Because you have, for example, a person being brutally slaughtered, the family is in mourning and under stress in an impoverished society. And then this gives rise to what I term in this book the vulture culture. Because what we find is that the individual who has suffered loss is now expected in this vulture culture to at the same time be providing entertainment, refreshment, and all these things for the community. Whereas in the true African tradition, the community should be the one to rally around the individual to render assistance in such a time of weakness and grief.
We've become a morbid society where death is celebrated, and it's an interesting concept that we have to look at, because if we continue to, what's the end result of this? And I don't know the extent to which you've gone into this, because I know you have also given some practical solutions that are suggested to address these crimes that you have highlighted in the essay. Once again, the book is called An Essay on Crime in Jamaica. What are some of the practical solutions that you've suggested that could address these crimes?
Right. Well, let us look, for example, at the gun crimes, because out of the, let us say, the 1,000 murders that take place on a yearly basis, the weapon of choice is really the gun, and they account for about 70% of the total number. So if there's 1,000 murders, we can roughly say there are 700 carried out by the gun as the weapon of choice. At the same time, we could look here now to see where are the guns coming from. We are not manufacturing guns, and the number of illegal guns are not represented in these figures. That means there must be a large cache of illegal weapons available for people who are carrying out these crimes for whatever reason, whether it's, contract killing, gang feuds, or plain robbery and so on. And at the same time, some of the solutions here is that we believe that this in a case where a person becomes victim to a gun crime, one, it should become the arbiter of the Ministry of National Security should bear some onus on this type of situation. They should share some responsibility, because as we pointed out earlier, it's a very costly affair when you suffer the loss of a loved one through burial, preparation, etc. On the other hand, is that we should advocate for legislation with the international community. So, for example, the country of origin or those manufacturers of these weapons, once they are found, should be made also to bear the burden of, for example, let's say the breadwinner is killed. Then either the state or some of these international communities should be able to fund the schooling and the welfare of the children left behind until they reach 18 years or are able to really fend for themselves.
Well, in terms of the weapons coming in through breaching the border, I remember some are made here too. If you recall, when President Barack Obama was here recently, and part of the conversations that they seem to have had with the Prime Minister, because they came back and talked about discussing the protecting the borders, the Prime Minister said that there was no problem with that. But at the same time, we're hearing other reports of how porous the borders are. So regardless of the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, it benefits only the United States. And so the issue of equal partnership, of coming to the table equally or if not equally, close enough so that you can make these demands on the oppressor, because that's what it ends up to be at the end of the day, in terms of protecting the borders. And what I'm getting there is to say, how then do you say to the United States, you have to take responsibility for the family who was killed with a gun that come from America through our borders? I mean, is that even possible?
Well, certainly we can organize and, lobby some of the international human rights agencies. And as I did say too, some of the owners should also be on the Ministry of National Security, whose mandate is to provide security for the citizens. So if it becomes onerous on them where they will have to make large payouts, then obviously, which they won't want to do, they will make greater efforts in providing security for the citizens. And if 70% of the crimes are gun-related, and most of these are illegal weapons, and we can regulate and contain these numbers, then obviously, on a simple logic, you would find that the number of murders for 1 year would drop drastically from 1,000 to just around 300 mark. Not that it is anything to be proud of, but that would be a significant decrease in the murder rate if we look at it from this perspective. We look also not only at these type of things, we look also at the social impact as well. And people who are victims definitely are not getting the follow-up that they need, and so this again is a cost to the society, and also this should be funded. All of these should be taken into consideration, and such a collective fund should be made available to be a kind of reparative cost for these victims. I look at some of the other what you would call simple crimes, such as predatory larceny, for example, and something like that. For example, when the perpetrator is apprehended, it's not for him to be mob beaten and so on, but what we should do is actually identify him, make him aware of what he's doing, and actually put him in field time to go back and work in the field, for example, to help to repair the damage that was carried out. And in so doing, we have repaired the damage, number one. Number two, we have introduced him to the community who can then carry out surveillance on him so that he wouldn't be tempted again to carry out such crimes. This similar methodology could be used for the rapists. Once they carry out such an action, we need to bring them in, try to find the psychological problems that are there, or what are the conditions that would allow them to carry out such behavior, and at the same time introduce them to the society so that they can be monitored for their own good and for the societal good as well. We also look at, for example, we are now having good relations with the Chinese. We could use them as part of the curriculum to introduce, for example, self-defense techniques. These could be done in the school curriculum. It could be even done over the public TV so that even adults at home could carry out the practices. And what this would do, it would enable us to apprehend intruders without resulting in morbid and mob violence. And at the same time, it would have additional health benefits for the practitioners there. So these are some of the type of things. We also look at the possibility of the curriculum and the media. The possibility of the curriculum and the media. For example, we hear on the news on a nightly basis or daily basis or in the papers that 5 people were killed, 10 people were killed, but they are not identified. So, for example, if there is a Chinese murder somewhere, it's clearly identified as such. If it's a Caucasian, similarly, they're identified. But when we hear that, 5 people were murdered in Montego Bay or St. Catherine, it is not brought home to us that these are black people. And the 1,000 people murdered on a yearly basis are mainly black people. So if the media was to highlight this by using that word black or African every day, it would make an impact on us, and we would have more empathy, realizing that we ourselves are not clear.
And you're saying that comes against the background of the media identifying when a Chinese is killed or robbed or hurt, or when a European has been killed or robbed or hurt. You're saying that because these other people are identified, these other races are identified, and then obviously it really does come with shock and outrage that the media says this of black people in Jamaica, African people in Jamaica, when and you have thousands of people being murdered, then that will create at a psychological level.
Yes.
Some kind of.
So.
All right. We have to wrap up, but thank you very much. Obviously, the book is called An Essay on Crime in Jamaica, and it is what it is. It's an essay on crime in Jamaica. Is it available?
Yes, it's available at Amazon.com, Kindle ebooks, and you can type in an essay on crime in Jamaica.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur Green. An essay on crime in Jamaica available at Kindle Books and also on Amazon.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Right. We wanted to have a quick chat with Professor Vereen Shepherd, even for 2 minutes, if she's here, on the island about her new appointment. And I know we do have the bottom line coming up. And my broadcast assistant tells me also that we have a walk-in guest, that Iowa is here. And so I'll talk to Iowa for 5 minutes. I was going to mention the event, but since he's here, we'll talk with him for 5 minutes. And I also wanted to quickly hear from Professor Vereen Shepherd, Shamara, about the new appointment at the United Nations. Could we do that? Thank you so much.
Free Africa. Running Africa ni. Ahaye Jamaica. Sa wote kaka se boso kadia. Ewo Ire FM.
By the way, the meeting of the Eastern Centre and Ganja farmers will be taking place today at 3 p.m. at Good Times Lawn in Clement in St. Anne. All right, Professor Shepherd is on the line. Good morning, Vereen.
Hi, Cabo. Morning.
Morning. Thanks for the note. So I saw the information and posted it online and taking comments on your behalf, please.
Thank you.
But I still did have a question because I know you've been integrally involved in the process. So tell us about this. Give us a background first to the new appointment at the UN.
Yes, I sent you the note because I realized that many people were wondering, well, am I not already on a UN body? So what's the difference? So the difference is that I was on the working group of experts on people of African descent. That mandate is specific to people of African descent. I rotate off that working group next year, April.
Okay.
So now Jamaica put me up for another post at the UN. This is on the Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which has a wider mandate. It is supposed to monitor states who have signed on to the International Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a treaty body that will hold states who have signed to the treaty accountable for what is going on in their country, as long as it has to do with discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, skin color, and other kind of intersecting variables. So Jamaica was one of the 12 countries that put up candidates for 9 seats because 9 seats became vacant this year. And so Jamaica, that is Vereen Shepherd, the vote was held on June 25 at the UN in New York. Was very nail-biting.
I was going to say tense now.
Yes, honestly. Because I had to sit in the room while the ballots were, distributed, the votes counted, and the results announced. So Jamaica got most of the votes.
Yes, and there was a big margin too, from what I saw.
Yes, yeah. So I think Jamaicans in New York were happy because they were saying Jamaica got more votes than the USA.
but let me
you know how it is.
I know exactly how it is. But let me just congratulate you on behalf of IRFM and the people and the listeners. I think it's well deserved because and I think the confusion comes in people's minds not because they knew you were on a committee at the UN, but because you have always been doing this. And so it's like,
that's true. Yes, that's true. But this is a wider mandate.
Yes.
That committee is a very important committee because there is actually an international convention.
Yes.
And it's the 50th year of that convention this year, November. This year, 2015.
Okay.
And it really is, what happens is that for 2 times per year, for 3 weeks each time, all the 18 members, there are 18 members on the third, and they meet in Geneva for 3 weeks, and they they interrogate states. Each state comes up before the third every 2 years. Jamaica has already come up before the third and will come up again soon. And so each state has to submit a report to the committee. The committee studies the report, and then the states send a delegation to Geneva to appear before the third. And we then question them about what is going on in their country and what measures they are taking to ensure that racial discrimination and other intersecting discriminatory actions that could be related to difference by skin color and so on, what are they doing to ensure that they eliminate this, and also what they're doing to ensure that they are in compliance with all the articles of the International Convention on the elimination of racial discrimination. So I'm really, it will be a seamless transition from the working group to the third, but it means that the mandate is larger. You take into consideration Maroons, indigenous peoples in other countries, Roma people, Dalits. You know, it's a wider, it's a wider mandate than the one I have now. But yes, I've been working on these issues for a long time, and I think that's why so many countries voted for me. Even countries you wouldn't think would vote for me voted for me.
Because I remember the issue with the Netherlands.
Yes, the Black Pete in the Netherlands.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, the pressure that you came under for that. But so this would be something that would have been looked at by the third.
Yes. Yes. So when the Netherlands comes up before the third again, obviously this would be an issue. And interestingly enough, the representative from the Netherlands came up to me during the lobbying process to say the Netherlands will vote for you. I was shocked.
Well, there you go. Who would have thought it?
I know. So I think obviously people realize that regardless of the fallout, and somebody who they see as really an independent expert. Because you don't, even though your country puts you up, you don't represent your country. We're all independent experts. I would never, that to me that's more palatable to me. I'm an independent expert with my own mind, working on these issues, which are important issues in the world. We're seeing what's happening in Charleston right now.
Right, and getting even more so, because it's almost like the powder keg is exploding right now, where race is concerned. So I can just imagine that you must have, the group must have its hand full, actually, the third.
Absolutely. It's going to be quite an interesting 4 years, because you are elected for 4 years in the first instance. You can go for re-election. So let's see what the first 4 years will look like.
Well, let's see. I'm very happy that you're there. May I just say that? And you know, we do keep in touch, so we'll ensure that as things progress, that we know what's happening.
And I think this is something the media should watch. You know, I don't think the media in Jamaica are aware, as they should, about the International Convention on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination and what the articles bind states to do. I think if the media paid some attention to this, they would hold Jamaica more accountable.
Well, I'm thinking that, but I didn't say it. I'm thinking that I have a responsibility here.
Yes. There's work to be done in our own backyard. And
of course.
I have been, let me say publicly, thanks to all the people who have been sending congratulations, because I think I feel overwhelmed at this moment.
It's all over the social. I'm monitoring the comments.
I realize, and it's for me, as you know. It's a great honor for reasons that you know.
Yes.
You know, it's one thing. You know, the international community is always recognizing some of us. Locally, it's not so. So it's great.
Quite
you know.
True. Yeah. Congrats again.
Thank you.
VS. We're really are happy for you that this has happened, and that at least you're there. And because I think it's a pretty good position for one of us.
Yes, it's very.
To be in.
I hear you. I hear you. It's also very important for the region, because CARICOM has never, in all the 50 years of the International Convention, the years of third, the CARICOM has never gotten elected to the third. Even though the UN believes in geographical balance and so on. Haiti went up some years ago, didn't get on. Cuba was on for some time, but the CARICOM region has never won a seat. So it's very significant for Jamaica. Jamaica has never been on third. The region has never been on third. despite the fact that we know very well the impact of racial discrimination in our region and suffered from it historically. So I think a Jamaican and a CARICOM national will have will bring value to the third.
To the process, yes. Thank you so much.
And I'll do my best.
I know you will. Thank you, thank you so much,
thank you
Professor
again.
Vereen Shepherd.
Thank you, and thank you to your listeners.
All right, just so that you know that she's been nominated for the to be a member of a committee on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. That is the third. And it is a UN treaty body that monitors the implementation of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. There are 178 states parties to this convention, including Jamaica. Once again, congratulations to Professor Shepherd. All right, the world-renowned expert on holistic healing, Dr. Sebi, he's from Honduras. He'll be in Jamaica on July 5. And Iowa is here. Iowa, one of the organizers, bringing in Dr. Sebi. Quickly, Iowa, in a minute. Who is Dr. Sebi?
Dr. Sebi is the holistic healer, and he's based in Honduras. Yes, he's the cure for all diseases that seems to be uncurable.
And he has made that claim, and not only has he made that claim, you have people from all around the world who have been to see him.
Yes.
In terms of seeking cures for all kinds of diseases.
Yes.
All right, so he's coming into Jamaica when?
July the 5th.
And where?
He'd be at the Ture.Crime Park in Ocho-Rios.
All right, tell me what that day is going to look like. What's going to happen?
Actually, that day is a complete day of holistic, it's an Afrocentric day. We're having live food, you have some drummers, we have different lecturers, they're giving their speeches. Yes, pertaining to the holistic lifestyle.
And you also have performances, because Muta will be performing?
Yes.
Who else?
And Iwin, and Yes Safari, and others.
But there's a charge to go in. What's the charge?
Yes. It's adults $2,000 and children $700.
All right, and once again, that is July 5.
Yes.
And where?
At the Ture.Crime Park in Ocho-Rios.
And it's an internationally global renowned expert on holistic healing, Dr. Sebi from Honduras.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so that once again, that's happening on July 5, and it's going to be right here in Ocho-Rios. All right, this is how we say goodbye for another day from the Africa Forum. I want to say thanks to all of my guests. Want to remind you that we have two big dates coming up. August 16. August 16 is the tribute to Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey here on the grounds at IRA FM in the courtyard. Our very special guest this year is Chairman Omali Ishtela, and he'll be speaking on the theme of the celebration. The tribute is One African. That's important. We're doing that against the background of the 74th year also of our elder ancestor Kwame Ture, who talked about the need for an African united front, the need that all black organizations should come together and have a united front, that we should never be discouraged in the struggle. If what we form is dismantled by the enemy, we must get together again and start from a highly qualified zero. You knock it down, we're coming back stronger. That's what it is. Determined to see victory at whatever cost. So August 16, Chairman Omari Ishtela will be our guest speaker here. And then in September and October, really three big events. At September and October, the enactment of the trial against Governor Eyre, the trial of Governor Eyre, that will be happening in Montego Bay, in St. Thomas, in Morant Bay at the courthouse. And then again on October 11, we're back in St. Thomas, recalling and remembering commemorating the Morant Bay Rebellion. So all of that's happening September, October, and then in August, of course, August 16, tribute to Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Amen. OTEP. Amen, OTEP, yes. That's where that come from. Let me hear you talking now, in.
We have to go reason, you know.
We have to go reason, man.
We have to go reason.
We have to go reason.
Yes, Rasta.
Yeah. So, okay, we're leaving you now. What good? Tell them other one how they reuniting the African family for development. My name is Kabo Ba'at Kheru. See you next week.
Sabune dona ronka jati dunia tawonka ndima
For you is everlasting.
I love it if you choose to use the comb or choose to wear your locks out, baby. Oh, I wanna love you damn.
That's why the comb and let down your hair. Are you wear the crown in there, girl?
You are my African king. You alone my love, not another for you. I sing, oh, every love song I bring. Every single note, every word
African royalty. There's not another for me, girl. You are my African woman. The stone that the foolish cast out is a diamond for you, baby. Whoa. I know other man you know want, no, just Simon for you, baby. Oh yeah, child of the motherland, you can't find another one. No replacement for a real African. Me give you the medallion, 1 in a million. So put your hand in a for me and the earth.
You are my African king. You are my love, not another for you. I sing, oh, every love song I bring. Every single note, every word, so they sing. Cause you are my African king. You are my love, not another for you. I sing, oh, my African. I don't know about an ex-girl, but I you me want. Nobody can compare to you cause you a shot. Up in my life, you know what that's how you figure. Straight up, baby, you feel be me, you feel shot. Na. But I only just a talk. Meeny, miny, more, guess who I feel my star. Black up in this, a black man me represent. All of we are one, but you the only one from heart. Oh, my African king. You are my love, not another for you. Yes, I oh, every love song I bring. Every single note, every word, so you sing.
And you African royalty. There's not another for me. African woman.
Hey, Mr. African, pick up where you come from, baby. How I love your black skin. You're built to perfection, and you don't need no suntan, cause your body's so exquisite. I love it if you choose to use the Kwame juice for where your locks out, baby. How I wanna love you down. State my claim, you belong to me. You are my African king. You are no my love, not another for you. I sing, oh, every love song I bring. Every single note, every word, so listen. Cause you are my African king. You are no my love, not another for you. I sing, oh, my African.
Activist has climbed the flagpole in Columbia, South Carolina at the state capitol and removed the Confederate flag of her own accord. Take a look at this picture we're getting in here. She calls herself Bree, and it happened just about an hour ago.
Yeah, 6:30 local time, Eastern time here. Bree, again, that's what the name that we've been given, was arrested. The flag was taken from her, but it's not been replaced. This is coming from Fitzgibbon Media. They're reporting this. Now, again, as you look at these photos that we have online, courtesy the Sparrow Project, they've tweeted those out. You see video here now of this happening. This is happening as the funerals of the 9 victims of that terror attack a week ago are happening. There are comments that are being posted online, but we're still working to find out exactly the sourcing of some of this information about who this person is, who was there, how and why this was organized. But there has been, as we know, this ongoing conversation about the flag. The legislature voted to allow themselves to take up the issue of taking the flag down after the 4th of July holiday. But we're hearing that these activists have said that they cannot wait, especially as these funerals are happening across the state.
Yeah, so we see, obviously, this is what was happening a short while ago, again, about an hour ago, as that flag was taken down by an activist. As we get more information, we will certainly bring it to you.
Posted online, but we're still working to find out exactly the sourcing of some of this information about who this person is, who was there, how and why this was organized. But there has been, as we know, this ongoing conversation about the flag. The legislature voted to allow themselves to take up the issue of taking the flag down after the 4th of July holiday. But we're hearing that these activists have said that they cannot wait, especially as these funerals are happening across the state.
Yeah, so we see, obviously, this is what was happening a short while ago, again, about an hour ago, as that flag was taken down by an activist. As we get more information, we will certainly bring it to you.